Welcome. And we are in the book of Deuteronomy. We started a new book. The tradition, of course, in the calendar is that it's set in such a way that we start the book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, the fifth book, the Shabbat that precedes Tisha B'Av, the fast of Tisha B'Av. And let's go ahead and make a bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
And just to remind you that we are in the midst of a series of three speeches, the first of three speeches that Moses gives in the last month of his life. And to the Jewish people, it's, you might say, Moses' last will and testament. And he is at this point reviewing the history that they have shared to this point, and that's what we're going to see. So I'm going to share the screen and show you where we are. Okay. Still in chapter 1, although we're fairly into the Parsha. So here we go. So this, as I said, this is in the midst of this discussion where he's talking about the fact that 40 years before, 38 years before, their parents and grandparents of the people he's speaking to he'd sent the 12 spies, and of course this tragedy that in fact Tisha B'Av commemorates took place at this very first time. And this is what they said. And Moses is saying, this is what they said. Ana anachnu olim. How is it possible for us to go on? But the word ana really means to where. Where can we go? Meaning as opposed to the land of Canaan as an alternative, right? But this is saying they're not going to go to the land of Canaan. You know, it's sort of like as a statement of desperation. You know, what can I do? Achenu, our brothers, Hemasu et levavenu, they have melted our hearts. Lemor saying, Am gadol a varam mimenu. They are a great and mighty nation more than us. They're mightier and greater than we are. Arim Gdolot, towns, cities, Gdolot, mighty, great cities, Uvitzurot, fortified, Bashamayim, in the heavens, meaning, of course, impossible to attack, very, very hard to attack. Vagam, and on top of this all, B'nai Anakim Ra'inu Sham, we saw the descendants of the Anakim, the Anakites, otherwise known as giants, right? So 3 reasons, right? They're a mighty, more powerful nation. They're more numerous. They're stronger. Gadol would be large, great, right? Their cities are fortified up to heaven. And not only that, the inhabitants themselves are descendants of giants. They're giants. Let's see if Rashi has anything to say. Here we are. Harim Gdolot Uvitzorot Bashamayim, right? Great cities fortified in heaven, right? So he says, Dibru Haktuvim, what's written here, Lashon Havai. It's a language of exaggeration. It's not to be taken literally. Okay. So, Va'omar alechem, and I said to you, Lo ta'artzun, do not be dismayed, do not be in dread, V'lo tir'u minhem, and do not fear them, do not fear them. Okay. So, Lo ta'artzun. And again, this word la'arotz is not a common word. Rashi is trying to help us. He says lashon shvira. It has the connotation of breaking. Ketargumo. So we can take a look at what the Targum says here. Here, lo tidabrun. Lo do tavar. So the taf in Aramaic often replaces the shin in Hebrew. And shavar, of course, means to break, and tavar in Aramaic means to break. In other words, do not be broken. Do not be broken. Don't be broken up over this. This we could even say it in English, right? Vedomelo, he says it's similar. They're similar. And in Job chapter 30, ba'arotz nechalim, when it says the wadis are or the arotz nechalim could be a complete description. In other words, the fissures, the split of wadis. Let's see, lishgon, lishbor. Let's see, this, I think this kaf here could be wrong. It could simply be lashon lishbor nechalim. So it could mean, I translated it one way, but here seeing it as a verb, right? Splitting rivers, and lashon, and I think this kaf is a misprint, to break wadis, to break rivers, okay, to split rivers, the place for the rivers. Let's go on. Hashem Elokechem, the Lord your God, ha'olech lifnehem, who goes before you, hu yilachem lachem, he will battle for you. Kachol asher, just as he did, like all that he did, asher asa, that he did, idchem, with you, b'mitzrayim le'enechem, in Egypt, le'enechem, before your very eyes. You've seen it. You've experienced it. You don't need to doubt it. You know God's going to do it. You saw it. You actually experienced it. What's your excuse, right? So, yilachem lachem, right? Bishvilchem. So he says lachem because la just simply means to, but it can also mean for. And here it means bishvilchem, for you, on your account. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And I'm looking at something here. Yeah. All right. So interesting is another print here, right? Notice yilachem is this letter, a chet, right? And look at this. Look at this. There's a kaf here. So again, we have to be careful. There are misprints here, right? Sometimes they're little misprints. Oh well. Okay. Uva midbar. Not only that, you've seen that. Uva midbar asher ita, and the wilderness which you saw, you witnessed. Asher nasa'acha, to the extent that he carried you, he bore you, Hashem Elokecha, that is the Lord your God, carried you. Ka'asher yisa ish et b'no, just like a man carries his son. B'chol haderech, the entire way, asher halachtem, that you have gone, ad boachim, to the point that you have come, ad hamakom hazeh, to this place. So, uva midbar asher ra'ita. So, Musav al Mikra Shamala, he says this sentence actually hangs on, or is dependent on a previous sentence, right? Kachol asher asa itchem b'Mitzrayim, that it depends. It's linked to the part where he says just as what he did in Egypt, right? Just as what he did, right? He will battle for you just as he did for you in Egypt, and this is linked to, and in this wilderness, right, that he has done it just the same way as he did it back in Egypt. That's the idea. Okay. V'asa af bamidbar, and he not only did it there, but he did it also in the wilderness. Asher ra'iti, right? Ra'ita, just as you saw for yourselves, that he carries you, he bears you. Kasher yisa ish ibno, just as a man carries his son. Kamosha pirashti etzel, as I explained, Rashi saying, as I explained, etzel, concerning the verse in Exodus chapter 14. Vayisa malach Elohim, the angel of God carried, right, or journeyed, I think here, carried, because Nasa is spelled with a sin and with an aleph, right? The angel of the Lord journeyed, Haolech lifnei machane Israel, that goes before the camp of Israel, etc. Mashal, it's a parable, lemahalech baderech, like one who is going on the way, uvno lefanav, and his son is before him, uvahu listim lishvuto, and bandits came to capture him, and of course he puts the son behind him, and that's his son behind him. And that's how Rashi explains that particular passage regarding the angel, how in every case God protected them. Uvadavar hazeh, and with regards to this matter, enchem ma'aminim b'Hashem Elokechem, you do not have faith, you do not trust the Lord your God. Uvadavar hazeh, and regarding this matter, shehu maftichachem lahaviachem el haaretz, that he has promised you, right, that he would bring you to the land, and chen maminimbo, you do not trust him, you don't believe him. So, of course, I feel that this is speaking to us, that Deuteronomy is trying to speak to us and to look around us and see how God has protected us on so many different occasions, and to know and to trust that God will come through for us no matter what, right? I mean, yes, they say, hachet gorim, that if you sin, if you do things that are contrary and immoral and sinful, things can change, and you're going to face serious adversity. You're going to face God's justice. But if you really try to believe, ultimately, I believe, if you have a sincere belief in God, you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry. So, going on, verse 33. Haolech lifnahem, referring to God, one who goes before you, baderech, on the way, latur lachem makom, to scout for you, makom, a place, lachanotchem, for you to encamp, or to encamp you. It's actually a causative, that God is causing you to camp in that place. Ba'esh laila, and fire at night, lar otchim baderech, to show you the way, asher techuba, which you should go, uve'anan yomam, and with a cloud during the day. That's Rashi. So this is an unusual form. So normally a causative form of a verb is called the hifil form, and that is characterized by a hey in front of the verb, and by the letter hey, and lahar otchem, and he's going to say, here we go. So he says lar otchem. So what happens, he's going to tell us, is that the hey in this case becomes elided, so that we don't pronounce it. So instead of, he says, just as if it said lahar otchem. And he gives another example in Exodus 13, lan chodchem. So in other words, instead of lahan chodchem, it's lan chodchem. That hay becomes swallowed up. Haderech, to lead them on the way. Another example in the book of Psalms 26, lashmia, the call, to sound out in a voice. In other words, to cause your voice to sound. But kol todah means in a voice of gratitude, a voice of thankfulness. And another example he gives us. So he says, this isn't uncommon, where the hifil in this particular case, where it starts off with a lamed, with the two, where the hay gets elided. And here Kings 2, the second book of Kings, chapter 9, lalechet lagid beYisrael, right, to go and tell is in Jezreel, right, instead of lahagid. Interestingly enough, we actually have the next in the verse itself. It says it does that ascend, and it goes here lachanotchem. Okay, lahachanotchem is probably what it should be, right? Unless it might be meaning for your encampment, but I think it's a verb. I do think it's a verb. And I think it's to take the place of the hachanotchem. Right? So, oh, sorry, that's what he comments on. Lar otchem. Here it is. Right, sorry. Short-term memory, right? So, lahar otchem. So it's in the very same verse. We have the same phenomenon taking place. Okay. Vayishma Hashem, and the Lord heard et kol direchem, the sound of your words. Right. Vayiktzov, and he was angered. Vayishava lemor, and he swore, saying. Let's take a look, see what we've got here. Okay, nothing until verse 36. Okay, so keep going. This is what he said. If a man amongst these men will see, in other words, it's a vow. This is the form of a vow. Hador, hara, hazeh, this wicked generation, if they will see, in other words, they won't see, right? I swear, if they will see, in other words, the way it would be said was, may the Lord do such and such to me if this happens, and the such and such is not a good thing. Okay, so God is swearing by himself that this isn't going to happen. Okay, et haaretz hatova, this good land, asher nishbati, which I swore latet la'avotechem, to give to your forefathers. Zulati Kalev ben Yefuneh, with the exception of Kalev, son of Yefuneh, hu yir'ena, he will see it. Velo eten et haaretz, and to him will I give the land, asher darachba, which he trod on, ulevanav, and to his sons, to his descendants. Ya'an, because Asher milei acharei to Hashem, because he was full, in other words, full-hearted, right, in following God. So again, Deuteronomy trying to get us to respond and to learn from these words in the hopes that somehow we will also be able to live our lives having learned the lessons of previous generations. So, Asher Darachba, which he trod on, and specifically Rashi tells us, Chevron. It was Chevron. Shne'emar, as it states in Numbers 13, Vayavo ad Chevron. He came up until Chevron. They arrived at Chevron. Let's keep going. V'gam bihitanaf Hashem, and with me too, hitanaf Hashem, the Lord was angered, biglalchem, on your account, right, or because of you, lemor, saying, gamata, this is what God said to me, gamata, you too, lo tavosham, you shall not come there. And it's interesting, I think, that there's this connection and this parallel between what happened to the Israelites and what happened to Moses. Even though Moses had the faith, he had sufficient faith, and of course he didn't go in because it appears that he lost patience, okay? But the fact that these two verses are put right next to each other, that in Deuteronomy, the fact that the people aren't going in, and the fact that Moses isn't going in himself, is a way in which I think it expresses the connection that has to exist between a people and its leader, and a leader and its people. that there needs to be this combined faith of combined fate as far as what happens, that you can't just divorce yourself from the people you lead. So he is saying this to him. And incidentally, there's something else that is mentioned in the tradition, that during those 38 years that the people were destined to wander around in that wilderness, there was no prophecy for Moses. That when God was angered with the people, Moses wasn't able to receive any prophecy. So again, the idea of the people and their leader being together, congruous. So let's take a look here. Yeah, Hitanaf, Nit Male Roges, was filled with anger. Joshua bin Nun haomed lefanecha, Joshua son of Nun, who stands before you, hu yavo shama, he will come there. Or to chazek, strengthen him. Okay, and I think it means, because I think he's speaking here. Chazek. I'm trying to think if, let's see, I'm looking at maybe this means that God made him strong, right? That God is the one who has strengthened him. Kihu yanchilena et Israel, for he will inherit, as a transitive verb, right? He will cause to inherit Israel. And this is a good place, I believe, for us to stop. So I'm going to do that, and I'll mark the place. Okay, and I'm going to stop the share. All right. Okay. So, okay. I'm going to actually stop here, and I'm going to stop the recording, and take care.